Bangalore is way older than many of the metros in India. So it's older than Chennai, it's older than Calcutta, it's older than Mumbai too. All right, so they are British cities. Bangalore is not a British city.
The Lal Bagh Rock is a national geological monument. It dates back to between 3 to 3.3 billion years old.
The narrative that we have about Bangalore, having started off in 1537, is being debunked. It's way older than that. And the story of Veera Balala getting lost in a forest and a lady offering him boiled beans, that story is also just a story.
The Kadle Kai Parishe, Peanut Harvest Festival as it is known as, and this will happen in Basavanagudi area. Climb a hill called Matanga Hill, and there's a small temple up there. Go early in the morning, watch the sunrise, the Tungabhadra river on one side, and then you'll see boulders after boulders after boulders.
Welcome to the BreakFree India podcast. This is me, Jane, and today we are going to talk about our city, Bengaluru. Well, did you know that Bangalore was founded in 1537 by Kempegowda? It's a city that began as a modest mud fort, and the name Bangalore is apparently derived from Benda Kalu Uru, which means town of boiled beans. This was given by a grateful king after being offered a simple meal by a poor woman. Of course, later on, the influence of the British in 1831 is what was something that we know Bangalore more as today, because you have public buildings like the Lal Bagh, Cubbon Park, Bangalore Cantonment. It was a hub for the British military, and the British made Bangalore their administrative center. Well, later on it became a garden city, a science hub, and today Bangalore is known as the Silicon City with so many startups, IT. The boom is unreal. People from all across the country are in Bangalore. But today we're going to celebrate Bangalore just a little bit more with our special guest, Praveen Singh. Now, Mr. Praveen Singh is an entrepreneur at heart, and he also has founded something called the Hidden Gem Stores. And we're going to actually find out how beautiful Bangalore is for everybody new and old in Bangalore. Mr. Praveen Singh, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for being on the BreakFree India podcast.
Thank you, Jane, for having me over. It's a delight to be here. And sure, happy to talk to you about my favorite place, my hometown, Bangalore. And here we are.
I love it that, Bangalore is first off so welcoming to people from across the country. It is a cosmopolitan city today. And, there are people from all across the country and the world who are here. But if you, from your eyes and ears, since you know the culture, the history, the heritage, the food, of Bangalore, if you had to explain to us Bangalore through your eyes and ears in just a little snippet, what would it be?
First of all, the current narrative, the narrative that we have about Bangalore, having started off in 1537, is being debunked. It's way older than that, way older than that. And the story of Veera Balala getting lost in a forest and a lady offering him boiled beans, that story is also just a story. Wow. All right, so we have evidence now in the form of inscriptions on stones, which dates us way back in time. The earliest evidence that we have right now is from 890 AD, which there's an inscription in a place called Nageshwara Temple in Beguru. Now it's in the hub of Electronic City, and there, if you go there, you'll see an inscription mentioning a particular battle, and in that. It mentions, that is, in that inscription, there's a mention of a place called Bangalore. So that is that's how far we have evidence of a place named Bangalore currently. So
you corrected my history, and I'm very glad for that, because a lot of people actually don't know where Bangalore came from. But if the origins go back to as early as 890 AD, then the history and the traditions of this city are they go pretty far back.
Indeed. So Bangalore back then was a collection of many small, villages and hamlets. They have been in the Bangalore region. There have been very important towns such as Beguru, as already mentioned. We already know on towards the airport, we have a place called Hebbar, and that's also a very old place. We have over there again, we have an inscription. Actually, it's called a Viragalu, hero stone that dates back to even earlier, from 750 AD. So we know that there's been this has been a major trading hub. It's been a cultural spot going back to more than 1,200, 300 years from now. So so there's people have been arriving into Bangalore from that time, and even now Bangalore is a very welcoming city. And there's a reason why it is welcoming, because people have been arriving, and the people who are the earlier settlers have been happy to have the newcomers.
In terms of the British influence, I really want to ask you, like the Lal Bagh, the Cubbon Park, the Bangalore Cantonment, a lot of buildings. Do you think when you go on your heritage walks, you've seen the influences that pretty well in the city?
Yeah, of course. For most people, Bangalore seems to be a new city because the cantonment or the British part of the city is more easy to recall. There's a lot of material written about those the British monuments or institutions, such as the High Court building or Lal Bagh Botanical Garden, which is taken over by the British. And so the British part of the history is more easy to recall. And as a result, people think it is a relatively new town. But the truth is, Bangalore is way older than many of the metros in India. So it's older than Chennai, it's older than Calcutta, it's older than Mumbai too. All right, so they are British cities. Bangalore is not a British city.
I was not aware of that. I'm from Madras, and I always thought that the history of Madras was, or maybe Calcutta, was a little older. But you're saying Bangalore, you're going on record and saying Bangalore is much older than these cities?
So they were the British capitals of their respective provinces, right? Madras or Chennai was the capital of the Madras Presidency, and its origin is in the 1600s. And Calcutta, likewise, would have been a collection of hamlets earlier, and its origin is in the late 1600s again. Mumbai came to the British as a dowry from the Portuguese, so that also happened around the same time, then in the 1600s. Whereas we already, even if you go by the Kempegowda story, it goes back to 1537. But I'm telling you, we have had, there's evidence now, plenty of evidence of habitation in the Bangalore region, which goes back to maybe 800 years before Kempegowda too. So, yeah.
I did read about the influence to a battle that was even important, maybe even a military site that was there. It's wonderful actually looking back at the city, especially as somebody who's come from outside. But my next question here to you is, because you've gone on so many walks, heritage walks and otherwise, for somebody who's new to Bangalore, who's watching this, where do they start exploring Bangalore? Like, if you had to give us like a start point to actually understanding the beauty of the city, what would it be?
Yeah, for most people, Bangalore now, they want to go to the malls or the pubs, and that's mostly the youngsters. They begin to explore the city in those places. I would urge everyone to go to some of the culturally rich localities. Go to the parks. There's a reason why it is called the Garden City. So a good starting point will be places like a Lal Bagh or a Cubbon Park, which are historical gardens. Incidentally, go to localities like Baswanagudi, go to places like Malleshwaram, or if you have the gumption, go to the Avenue Road area, and you get to understand the real Bengaluru, right? So that will be a good starting point. And of course, then you come to the other side of the city, which was the British half. I'll come to that. There used to be two cities once upon a time. And yes, you will anyway be spending some time in the watering holes or in that part of the town. So yeah, I would urge people to explore the places I just mentioned.
Fantastic. But I did catch you talk about the city being two parts. What was that?
Right. So there were two cities. The first one is the original town that Kempegowda did set up in 1537, which was a mud fort, about 2.5 square miles. Okay. And he had invited the locals around this region to come and make it their home. And soon enough, we had people of various trades and vocations
who made it their home. So even now, if you go to those areas, you'll see localities named after the vocations of the early settlers. So you have places like, Kumbarapete, which in Kannada means a pottery town. So it's still around there. And this is a township named from 1537 that Kempegowda set up. Or you have Akipete, rice traders town, or Nagaratapete, the grocers town, or Arlepete, which is a cotton merchants town. So about 20 plus townships, or petes as they call, in that original part of the city. And later on, in the early 1800s, we had another township emerging. It was called the Civil and Military Station, which was established by the British. And there was a gap between these two places, which today is Kapan Park, okay, or what you call Chamarajendra Park. So these were two townships which grew parallelly. Each of them had their own, flavors. On the British side, you had everything which is typically English. You had the pubs, you had the dance halls, you had golf, you had cricket, and you had polo clubs, and so on and so forth. Okay. On the other side, we had the traditional Bengaluru or Indian culture. We had temples and mosques and the streets selling all the local wares inside the fort town. So there were two parallel cities divided by just a few, just by a park now, and it's probably 2 kilometers distance from each other. So until 1947, that's when we became independent. Only in 1949, the corporations of these two cities got merged, and now it's known as the Bangalore.
I had no idea that, we had like two different parts that came together. I mean, we have heard of like New Delhi or Delhi, but this is pretty much like two different areas of Bangalore that came together. Did they also have separate administrations at that point?
Yes, of course. The municipal officials, for example, of the cantonment, as the civil and military station was later on known as, is today the civil courts on MG Road, the Mayor Hall. So that is where the municipal offices of the British township was, right? So that's where the affairs of the, and then that was the one.
Wonderful. I mean, I'm learning new things about Bangalore all the time. Tell us a little bit about after both these places came together, and today we have Bangalore that is, one central place for everybody who comes in. But even today, we have Whitefield and that area, and which is completely considered to be one part of Bangalore, and then where you have Central and then you have South. How do you see Bangalore today being, looked at?
Whitefield was not Bangalore. Yeah, I'm from Bangalore, right? I grew up here. I had friends in my school who used to come from Whitefield, and I'm talking from the 80s. And it was never considered Whitefield as Bangalore. If I wanted to speak to a friend in Whitefield back in the day on a phone, you had to make a trunk call. Okay, so you understand it's a different. It is not known as Bangalore. Whitefield itself has an interesting history. It comes up in the 1880s, 1882, I think so, when the Maharaja of Mysore, back then his name was Chamarajendra the 10th, had granted about 3,000 acres of space to the Anglo-Indians to set up a community there. So it was definitely not in the then known Bangalore. Until very recently, Whitefield was definitely not considered Bangalore.
My next question was, right now, how would you see Bangalore in different pockets? Like, as a person who understands its history, its current geography, how would you split it?
Yeah, I think it's more a blend of everything that I have mentioned to you. So there used to be a very distinct divide when I grew up. When you say the cantonment, if you want to buy a pair of jeans, or you want to have a mug of beer, or you want to watch an English movie, that was the only place to go to. Even the people from the other side of town who aspired to do for these things, they had to come over here. But now it's all changed, right? So traffic is the leveler. So we have everything available everywhere. So it's more a blend of both the cultures, the old and the new.
You think the democratization of availability of restaurants, banks or, education institutions or anything for that matter today, food bonds, is a good thing that every place is localized and has its own sort of like mechanics to work. Because, earlier, I feel like you said, there was a definite distinction. The parts of Bangalore where you could do fun stuff and then the local stuff. But today, I see every part of Bangalore is like Kalyan, for example, or, go to the airport side, like, Yelahanka. Every part is kind of almost self-sufficient. Do you see that as a Port Bangalorean as a good thing?
Personally, I'm not happy with it. I like the idea of what we used to do when we were much younger, when we could decide, okay, at 5 p.m. in the evening, okay, I stay in Koromangala. I've been here for a long time. And many evening back then, group of friends or just my family would decide, okay, let's go for dinner to that side of town. Or let's go for ice creams to a place like Lakeview, and it was a joyous thing to do, and you can't do that any longer, right? So those places have come to your locality. It's not the same, right? It's not the same, yeah.
When I talk to old Bangaloreans, so this happened at a little discussion with my friends, and I met some old Bangaloreans. We were the new Bangaloreans. And while they were extremely welcoming to us, they still said when they step out, there is this feeling of, I'm an original Bangalorean. I was born here, I was raised here, and 2 generations have been here. And now you have a whole new influx of people who've come in the last 7 years or 6 years, 3 years, 2 years. They've been part of the startup culture. Now, when you're, on this podcast, my question here is, how do old Bangaloreans view new Bangaloreans? How do new Bangaloreans understand old Bangalore?
I'm an old Bangalorean, so I have no issue with people coming here. So I'm happy. We've always been a welcoming city. So that change is a constant. We have to understand that, right? Regardless of where. It's just that every place in the world is changing at the moment. Just that Bangalore, I think, got a shot of steroids. It's grown faster than everybody at other places. So, yeah. So the reality is there is going to be change, and it's how you view it and how you accept it. So I have no qualms with anybody, arriving. We have a lot of friends who have just arrived, and that's the welcoming nature of Bangalore. So I'm no different on that regard. Yeah.
I have that. I mean, why sometimes you have comments calling, new Bangaloreans coming in from different parts of the country. I still feel there is a warmth to the city, and I can say this on record that even though I'm from Chennai and Tamil Nadu, I've always felt extremely welcomed in this city, and I felt there is a part of the city that accepts people without any biases or predetermined stereotypes. Do you think that has anything to do with how you were raised? I mean, do you think this city is more broad-minded than other cities, at least in the south of the country?
I think the way Bangalore has evolved, it's a unique way that the city has evolved. As I mentioned, there were 2 cities once upon a time, right? And that has had a big role to play in the character of a person. Certainly, I believe there is a reason why Bangaloreans are welcoming, maybe a little more liberal, broad-minded, more accepting. We grew up in schools where everybody of every background were there. We never judged them for from where they came from or what religion they followed, and that's kind of Bangalore. And yeah, so that's probably one of the reasons why it's having that welcoming nature. Yeah,
love it. My first question, now we're getting into the podcast like deep, is 3 hidden gems, because you do 3, you do hidden gem tours. If you had to pick 3 hidden gems in Bangalore that most locals possibly don't even know about, what would they be?
Good question. There's so many. Okay, there's this place called the Aurobindo. I think it's a society here. Okay, now it's on Gangadhara Chetty Road. It's one of those places which will really take you back in time and remind you of a bygone era that Bangalore was, and I'm glad it's preserved just the way it is. It's a palatial place. It used to actually belong to the royal family of Nepal. Okay, and the last resident was the descendant of the Maharaja. She donated to the Aurobindo Society.
Look it up, and you'll see that it's a beautiful building, and the whole grounds and the quiet and peace of that place will really, it's very calming there. So that's one place that comes to my mind. We have a temple called the Sri Someshwara Swami Temple, and that's another place which most Bangaloreans may have heard it, but may not have been there. It's in Ulsur again, and it's hard to go there because if you're going to drive, you're not going to find a place to stop or a place to park. But if you get there, it's really fascinating. It's from the 1000s. It's one of the oldest monuments in the city. So that's another place I think I would want people to check out. It's beautiful. It's expansive. There are architectural elements which are there from various epochs, starting off from the Cholas, and then there's additions from the Vijayanagara people. So, and the temple complex itself is it's fascinating. So that's another place that comes to my mind. So you asked for a third place, right? So Bugle Rock Park, I would say visit that place. This one is in Baswanagudi. Okay, it's a lovely, not very large park, but it's got tall trees. It's got a lot of boulders, and on one of them you actually have a tower. Where back in the day, it's an old park. The story goes that when Bangalore was still a Kempegowda town, it's called Bugle Rock Park because guards used to blow a bugle in the evening hours to let the citizens know everything is fine and taken care of. You guys can relax now. So you have to visit that. And when you go there up to that tower and you look around you, you will see a dazzling sight, which is thousands of fruit bats dangling in front of you, like in almost touching distance. Now that is, you in an urban area, Baswanagudi is a densely populated area, and that tells you a bit about even the people there. We had COVID recently, and people were attributing the COVID to a virus which came from bats. Let me tell you, I went there even then. The bats were still there hanging. Nobody came to trouble there.
The Bugle Rock Park, the Aurobindo Society, and the temple was?
The Sri Someshwara Swami Temple.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I think for anybody who's watching this, if you want to discover an entirely new side of Bangalore, those are your three hidden gems. Have you ever uncovered a secret historical fact about Bangalore that even historians till today find themselves go speechless when they hear it?
Oh, historians should know. They better know. Well, it's fascinating, that one of the things that I found fascinating when I got delved more into what I'm doing now is to realize that back in the 1600s, there were important national figures today, like Shivaji, who were residents of Bangalore briefly. All right, so that shook me up too. I didn't realize that. And Shivaji's father was a warrior who used to work in the Bijapur Sultanate. And he had been rewarded the territory of Bangalore as his Jagir. And for about 50 years, it was in his possession. And Shivaji, of course, is from Satara, Raigad. And he had visited his father when he was here. And it was his co-brother who eventually inherits the place. All right, so that's a different story. But yeah, so when I realized that people like Shivaji have walking along Avenue Road once upon a time, it was fascinating.
That's insane. Just going back our history and understanding that these stalwarts from then couldn't walk our streets now. Does it sometimes make you wonder that history actually makes a man feel more humbled?
Definitely, yeah. I think we all should have a deep interest in history, no matter what you're doing. It certainly helps you understand the world better. We all assume that everything is happening now in our times. Things have been happening all through humanity. There's lots to learn. And we can really learn from the mistakes that have been created in the past and not repeat them now. It's in our nature not to do that. We want to reinvent the wheel every time. That's the reality of life. But yeah, if you can just step back a little and get a little interested in history, we'll have a lot more peace in the world for sure.
But praying for world peace as always. Tell us the craziest story you've encountered while exploring Bangalore's hidden gems on your tours.
Crazy story. I told you about Shivaji. Now, who would have thought that the Mughals were in Bangalore too? 2,000 kilometers away. They were here too, briefly. Okay. And this was in 1687 is when the Mughals captured the city of Bangalore and hold it on only for three years. And guess what they did? They sold it. They sold it for a princely sum of 300,000 rupees, 3 lakh rupees, to their ally, the Maharaja of Mysore. So this is an interesting aspect of Bangalore as well.
Today, if you were to just see how much the city is worth, 300,000 is a really paltry sum. Why did they not hold on to it?
For them, it was a fairly inconsequential place. The Mughal Empire was expanding rapidly in South India. This was during Aurangzeb's time. And they went even further south. And they lost interest because it is just a small 2.5 square mile mud fort that Kempegowda had set up earlier, which are probably a few multiples of 10,000 inhabitants. And there wasn't really not much for them to hang on to. So they found somebody who was interested in buying it, and they sold.
But the treasure that this city has become today, sometimes you see the rubble in the mud,
Right.
dirt stones,
Right.
and you don't see the that.
Absolutely.
Is now like one of the most beautiful gemstones in South India.
It is, yes.
All right. Next question here is, what must-see Bangalore location, according to you, in the streets of Bangalore, amidst the hustle and bustle? I know you gave 3 hidden gems, but a location that you think everyone should experience at least once in your lifetime.
Go to the Rock in Lal Bagh.
Lal Bagh is one of the most visited places, Lal Bagh and Cubbon Park. So I'm going to ask you both in Lal Bagh and Cubbon Park, because everybody goes there. What will they go to see and what do they experience today that is different from what they would otherwise normally do there?
So if you've been to Lal Bagh, what have you done? Can I ask you?
Just walked.
Okay.
No flowers.
Do you know that there's a rock there?
I think.
What do you think about that rock?
I have no idea.
Do you know that it's a national monument? We have Taj Mahal, we have the Gateway of India. These are all monuments of India, right? So Bangalore doesn't have monuments of that staggering, scale in Bangalore. For me, the Lal Bagh Rock is our monument because it is really a national geological monument.
What is the history behind it?
The history is that it's one of the oldest exposed rocks in the whole world, right in your backyard, dating back to almost 3.3 billion years old. That's like old. There aren't too many places in the world which can claim to that fame. And we have it right in your backyard. 3,300 million years old. All right, so that's how old that rock is. There are plaques over there. I'm sure people don't notice it. But that's because people in the Bangaloreans think there's nothing much to explore over here. But you just need to scratch the surface. There is good stuff here as like everywhere else too.
Fantastic. So now I'm going to go and check for the Lal Bagh Rock because that is definitely, it's closer to the age of the earth in itself. So that's good.
Yeah, the earth itself is like 4.8 billion years. This is 3.3. It's exposed, one of the oldest exposed rocks in the world.
And where did it come? Do you know where it was?
It's always there, right? It's come from the core of the earth. These are eruptions. You have these rocks in the Bangalore territory, in the region. If you go to Mysore, you'll see these beautiful, hillocks that are over there. They're all from the same time frame, So this has been declared a national geological monument. So we have our own monument too. When people say what's there in Bangalore, and they say Mysore is where you have to go to if you want to experience something substantial, I says, don't spend one day with us and I'll transform your thoughts about what you think Bangalore is.
Bangalore has so many fascinating cultural traditions that I'm sure you've come across, Praveen. Tell us one tradition that is break-free or a bunch of them that people should experience annually.
Yeah, I would like to recall a couple of them actually, and they are very interesting. They have interesting origins and backgrounds, and they're vibrant even today and for several hundred years. Let me tell you, the upcoming one is sometime in late November, early December. It's called the Kadle Kai Parishe, Peanut Harvest Festival, as it is known as. And this will happen in Basavanagudi area near the Bull Temple. And it's a fascinating event. It goes on for a few days, and it has interesting origins too. The story goes that the Bull Temple that is over there, which is a favorite hangout for the people in that area, they believe that the bull is a real bull. Okay, and it's a massive bull. If you go there, it's amongst the top 5 of top 10 monolithic bulls in all of India. It's 15 feet in length and 12 feet height. It's seated and from a single rock. And it's hard to imagine that could have been a real bull. Okay, but that's how culture is, right? So, and this is, it so happened that the story goes that back in the day, there used to be peanut fields all around that area. Farmers used to grow peanuts, and there was this naughty bull which used to go on a rampage and destroy the crop. So all of them decided one night that let's catch this bull, and they were consternated. So they kept vigil, and they found this bull chomping away on one night. A farmer took a huge iron staff and hit it. Story goes that it just sat there and started growing in stature. And that's when people realized, oh my God, there's some divinity in this. And then some elders said, if you put a trident on its head, it will stop growing at that stage. And that's what you will see when you go to the temple there, a trident on it. And it's 15 feet tall, 12 feet tall and 15 feet wide. And people have been following this story for more than 500 years. This is how, this is reality for a lot of people, right? And that tradition continues. We go there at the Kadle Kai Parishe, the roads are blocked off, the locals are all, are completely engrossed in the activity. It's a festive thing. It's nice to go there. Just, and if you don't want to do anything, just be there and you can feel the vibe that's there. There are several like this. So this is just one of them. There is something called the Bengaluru Karaga. That's again a centuries old tradition that happens in the oldest part of the city. This happens usually in April. And there's a temple called the Dharmaraya Temple in the Pete area. And it's dedicated to Draupadi, okay, from the Mahabharata. So we have a gentleman who carries a huge pot. He's the and then goes about several kilometers all around the Pete area to several shrines, including a mosque. And then there are people who have pulled out swords and protecting him. So you got to see this, and it's a very popular local festival, and I would urge people to check this out too. I can name several like this. Let me give one more last example. If you go to Alsur, you have a beautiful chariot festival decorated with flowers, where it starts in the Alsur Bazaar area, and all the temples of that area gather and pull out these beautifully decorated chariots with the idols of their gods and go out on an all-night procession. People are not familiar with all these things. Probably we are sleeping or whatever, but this is our old traditions which continue vibrantly even now. And it'll be interesting if you can take some time off and observe and get to know a little bit of this culture and the city as well.
Lovely. I mean, for somebody who comes to Bangalore and they live in those areas which are crowded or just have like multiplexes and malls, this is an entirely new side of Bangalore that you're exposing us to, especially the bull with the trident on its head, temples that are hidden in plain sight. Give us one temple that really fascinates you in terms of its history and how it looks and how it's built and the archaeology behind it.
So you must definitely visit. If you're looking at that kind of depth and variety, I can't think of a better place than I already mentioned this temple, the Someshwara Swami temple. The story goes that the inner sanctum sanctorium, it's a Lord Shiva temple. The Someshwara Swami is the local name. and it's a Lord Shiva temple. There are other minor shrines. The goddess Parvati over there is known as Kamakshi Amman. That's how she is described as. There's a beautiful Hanuman figure as well there. There are minor shrines over there. There's a couple of very old people trees. There are lots of statues of snakes. The snake god Vasuki and Nagaraja there, and the inner sanctum and the outer chamber is dated to be from the Chola period. That's like the 1000s. But the outside part is from a later period, from the early, they say from the 1500s, from the Vijayanagara time. So if you want to, everybody's heard of Hampi, for example, right? It's a fascinating UNESCO heritage site. If you want to see a glimpse of Hampi, that is the place to come to. Okay, you have a very beautiful entry, the doorway, the Gopuram, which is designed like a typical Hampi structure, where you have granite at the bottom and stucco, and as well as mortar on the top with lots of beautiful statues of various gods. It's a lovely doorway. There are lots of carvings and sculptures along the doorway itself. And once you enter the monument, you'll see a 48-pillared hall, which again, each of those pillars have several motifs, okay, of gods, of animals, of drummers. You can lose yourself for many hours just observing each of those lovely carvings. And then if you go along the perimeter of the temple, there are lovely carvings again. These are what you call high relief along the walls. It's hard to imagine that on one side you have several high relief motifs of saints or sages doing yoga, okay, on one side. I don't think there are too many places like that, that kind of motifs in any temple in Bangalore. On the Kamakshi Amman temple, you can see the beautiful high relief carvings of the Girija Kalyana, the marriage of Lord Shiva and Parvati. It's really fascinating. Right in the heart of Bangalore, we have a structure which has all this, which you definitely cannot imagine that it's in a city like Bangalore, which people think it's a modern, glass tower city, and then all you think of Bangalore as UB City or some Indiranagar or Koramangala, but you also have this side of Bangalore that is great to explore. I'm not saying don't go to those other places. You can have both of this.
It's a mix of the new and the old. I'm now going to go into a little bit of a rapid fire about different places that I know you can give us like a sneak peek into. I want each of your answers to be short and as pointed towards the best part about that place as possible, so that people who are viewing this podcast can actually go and check them out and look for that first when they go there. Okay? Mm-hmm. What makes Mysore Palace a must visit for all Bangaloreans, and what makes it really exciting for somebody who's going there for the first time?
Is the Versailles of India. It's really grand. You have to see it to believe it. Yeah.
One grand thing about it?
Yeah. Go to what is known as the public audience hall. It'll blow your mind.
Fantastic. Can you take us on a tour of Hampi? I know it's very difficult to put it all in under a minute.
That's a tough one.
But Hampi there's so much of a significance. What would it be according to you?
If you have to do one thing, and if I have to just say it in one sentence, I would say go climb a hill called Matanga Hill. Okay. And there's a small temple up there. Go early in the morning, watch the sunrise. And just as the clouds disappear, you'll see this surreal landscape that will slowly come alive. You'll see green on one side, fields of, sugarcane and paddy, the Tungabhadra River on one side, and then you'll see boulders after boulders after boulders, and it's a surreal, the visual. And then you see the spire of the Virupaksha temple emerging through the clouds. It's I don't know, it's hard to describe, but for me, that is the first thing I will do when I'm in Hampi. There's so much in Hampi. We'll need more time to talk about that.
Tell us one of the lesser known facts about the Kempegowda towers that most people miss.
I really need to ask how many people have seen all the towers or even where they are. You must see those places. They're fascinating. So we all know probably the reason why they are there. Let me tell you the reasons anyway. So they were set up by Kempegowda too, not the original Kempegowda, his grandson, in the early 1600s as the boundary marker of the then city of Bangalore. I told you back then Bangalore was a 2.5 square mile, fort. And these towers are about a kilometer and a half away from those fort walls. So this person was the visionary. He expected the city at some point of time to expand to the extent to these towers. Not just that, there was a strategic reason where the towers are where they are. They're all placed on hillocks on a high point at an arterial road of Bangalore. So if you go to the Lal Bagh Tower, it's facing the road that takes you to Hosur. So it was also a sentry tower. So guards could keep an eye on who's coming in and going out from the city. So if you go to the Mekri Circle Tower, it's going towards Hyderabad. So that's the other reason why that tower is there. There's one on near Alsur Lake on a hillock that is going towards Madras. So there are strategic reasons why those towers are there. The fourth one is in a lake, in a hillock near a lake called Kempambudi. The erstwhile old Mysore road used to go on that way. So there's a reason why those towers are. I urge people to go and actually see some of these towers.
That's wonderful. I did not know the king installed these towers, Kempegowda too, that too. And it's very interesting that these towers exist in like the borders and boundaries of our current city. I'm sure people now know about them so they can go check them out. The Bandipur National Park, it reveals its hidden wildlife treasures, which Karnataka in itself is very known for. Tell us, if you had to talk about the Bandipur National Park and also in general wildlife in Karnataka, what's the beauty there?
The Bandipur National Park is part of the Nilgiri biosphere. It's the largest protected forest in all of India. So it's the Nilgiri biosphere comprises Bandipur, Mutanga, as well as the one which is in Mutanga is in Kerala, and then you have Madumalai in the Tamil Nadu side. Of course, it also covers the Nilgiris range. So the Nilgiris biosphere has the largest collection of Asiatic elephants in the whole world. Karnataka itself has the highest number of wild elephants in India. So you're likely to see a lot of them, even if you're just driving through that. Bandipur, Karnataka, or Bandipur also has the second largest number of tigers in all of India. Chances are that if you go on a few safaris there, you might get lucky, either in Bandipur or maybe in Nagarhole also. And I love Bandipur because if you're a Bangalorean, it's not very far. And in Bangalore, you're very rooted to your cell phones and internet. You cannot avoid it. But you go to Bandipur, those don't work there. So you're really rooted to nature there. And that's one of the few places where you don't have cell towers and no phone and no internet. And you can be one with yourself and with nature. So that's a reason enough to go there.
What have you spotted in any of these wildlife sanctuaries, Nagarhole, Bandipur, any of these places that made you wow, like go wow?
Yeah, I've seen big cats jumping across while I'm driving. So what more you want? I've seen wild bears and dholes, dozens of them walking by. And a countless number of elephants, gaurs. Yeah, I'm yet to see a tiger. I've seen a big cat that was a leopard while driving by. So yeah, you don't need to do a safari really if you just know at what time to be there. You're likely to see a lot of wildlife.
I know a lot of my friends who actually do the city life and then they unplug, like you said. They just switch off, turn off their mobiles, detox, and go to actually check out the wildlife in Karnataka, which is quite resplendent. And I've gone to Nagarhole myself and I just loved it. Shout out to my friends Mel and Winston who've taken me to the forest. I think it's a breath of fresh air. Halebedu, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah,
Got that right?
of course.
A must visit for architectural lovers in Bangalore. What does one see there?
There are very few places in the world like Halebeedu. It's the grandest of the Hoysala temples. Now, only recently it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I'm appalled that it took so long for it to be called a UNESCO site, but I'm finally happy that it is now. I said there's very few places in the world which are of that caliber, because the profusion of sculptures and carvings and the caliber of those, I don't think I have seen any in that abundance and that quality. We have beautiful temples, of course, with lovely carvings in India, whether it's Khajuraho or Konark or even other Hoysala temples. But that temple sticks out really.
Any one thing specifically?
Just go to the western wall of the temple and just look at the abundance and the number of, the quality of the carvings. You'll see almost life-size sculptures. They're all in high relief along the walls. And you will see drummers, for example, right? Drummers beating a drum. You will see carvings where you can see a drummer wanting to fix the pitch of his drum. He has to put his fingers underneath the what do you call, the cord. You can see the fingers going underneath the cord, and then the other hand is fixed. He's setting that pitch, and that's captured so well in stone. You'll see the nails of the people there, and you'll see fascinating sculptures that I have not seen in too many places except in Hoysala temples, like a dancing Lakshmi. Now we expect Lakshmi to be seated on a lotus, okay, and showering the wealth on you, and that's why we bring her home, keep the wealth with you. But in Hampi, I think people love to have her dancing. In Halebeedu, she's dancing, and it's exquisitely done. There are so many reasons to go to Halebeedu. You could spend days. Even the friezes, there are, but I think in Halebeedu, I think there are about 7 friezes: elephants, horses, creepers, then what you call a mythical creature called a Makaratorana. Then you have swans and peacocks. And then the most interesting one is the frieze which has episodes from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and each of those have a particular, and in a small space they have encapsulated the entire chapter from that, and in extreme detail. It's really cool.
Fantastic. I mean, when I actually listen to your stories, each of them have such in-depth analysis of what you can see when you go to any of these places. Tell us the history behind Bangalore's heritage buildings that makes even locals go wow.
History behind heritage buildings. Let's take a British structure. I'm talking only mostly older prior to that. So let's look at the grandest British structure in Bangalore, which is now the High Court. It came up in 1868. Back then, that was the center of governance for the Kingdom of Mysore. It was called the Athara Kacheri, or the public offices. And I find it fascinating that the British Empire was at its peak, but they didn't have an architectural style of their own. Right? It's British Empire, but no architectural style of own. At least they've not used it in our places. It's a Greco-Roman structure. You'll see Corinthian columns. You'll see sloping eaves. You'll see pediments. You'll see semicircular arches. In some of the buildings, they have even faces of what looks like a Moses. It could have been a Queen Victoria. But just giving an example, it's fascinating to observe this, and go back and realize why it is, and then try to ruminate why they did it. I have no answer, but that's the style they have used in most of the buildings.
Do you think the imperialism was so entrenched in so many different cultures and countries that they decided to pick different parts of different cultures and put it in a country they're trying to take over? Is that why? I mean,
of course, it's a build to create. It was a show of strength, right? So buildings, those buildings came up when the might of the British Empire, right? So it was when architecture was used as a symbol of power. You wanted to really dominate. So you stun the people by putting up a structure which is way bigger than what is required. Let's look at the time that frame that it came up in. It came up in 1868. What do you think was the population of Bangalore back then? We are 13 million plus today. But back then, the population would have been like 160 or 150,000 people, 1 to 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh people. Do you think we needed such a huge building to govern, in this city? Of course, it is also the larger kingdom, a massive building. No, it was a time when these kind of, these were used as symbols of power. Now imagine those were the public offices. One of them could have been a revenue office, right? Or for your land record. So I need to go there every year and, maybe renew my, land, pay my tax there. And imagine I'm a local and I go and see this massive building there, and you have these strapping officers and guards over there. It's going to make me tremble, right?
That was the idea.
That was the idea, right? So it really is. When you imagine it this way, why it was built that way, it's really fascinating.
Fantastic. In terms of a vibrant marketplace in Bangalore, where do you like to go and just stand and absorb all the color and the culture? Just soak in a marketplace. What would it be for you?
There are many actually.
But early morning.
Early morning. Then if you have to go to an early morning place, then I would pick the flower market in the KR market area. It begins at around some 3:34 a.m. And it's not the regular flower market which is there in the daytime. It's on the street, and it's along what is the Silver Jubilee Park Road, most of it, and in the gullies like Go Down Street and parts of Avenue Road. So you have refrigerated trucks that come in late in the night and take up position. And these are guys who are exporting or even supplying exotic flowers and even greens to places like the 5-star hotels, or in the season time we have roses from Bangalore going to places like Amsterdam during Valentine's Day, and those are the long stem roses. And then of course they get exported to Singapore, Malaysia, and the Middle East too. And it's really large. When you go there at around say 5:36 a.m., it's already bustling. By 8 they wrap up, because then the actual shopkeepers come and take over the street. So this is something that you got to see it only at that hour, and try and go there. It's really fascinating.
I watch a lot of reels these days where girls and guys are going at that time to shoot some content just as the sun rises. And I think the vibrance of some of those absolutely incredible flowers, it just pops. And I think there's a part of Bangalore and Bangalorean in me that I think wants to sort of like put it on my Instagram feed. It's very Instagrammable in terms of the
It is.
flowers.
I have seen these youngsters now coming there to take these shots. You're right.
In terms of food culture, either Mysore or Bangalore, both of these places, because these are your areas of expertise, do you do specific food tours? And is there any one food item in each of these places that you particularly recommend?
Yeah, we do have food tours. Yeah, so there are several food streets in Bangalore. You might be familiar. We already know the VV Puram own one, but there are others. Older as well. There is the Nagaratpete area. That's fascinating. Again, it begins only after around 8 p.m. when all the other jewelers and grocers and all have shut the shop, and the street scene comes alive. So you will see guys setting up dosa stalls. He'll take out one Nandini ghee packet, one lady, and he'll make a small hole, and out it goes onto the dosa. Just watching that is quite fascinating. And then that fresh food getting prepared in front of you, you want to have that for sure. So you have interesting items that you get only there. So that's this is just one item I described. Likewise, you have badam milk boiling away on a huge cauldron, and the waft it's wafting, the aroma is wafting towards you. You want to have that. And likewise, they have many other interesting stuff.
In terms of biryani, I'm gonna interject, because Bangalore and biryani lovers go synonymously well with each other. Is there one place in Bangalore where you love the biryani?
I've become vegetarian, but for sure, I've visited enough biryani places prior to that, and I still visit them with my friends and with my family. So there are many. I mean, kind of biryani is what it depends on the kind of biryani you want to have. So I mean, my favorites are. If you want to have a South Indian style, you'll go to an Nagarjuna kind of place. If you want to go to a Donne biryani, you'll go to a place like Shivaji Military Hotel. If you want a real Muslim biryani, you go to the Taj in Shivaji Nagar. Okay, that is the holy grail for that kind of a biryani. So it depends on your mood. So you could choose what mood you're in today.
Hoskote biryani as well.
I've heard of that, yeah, but I'm not a big fan of that kind of biryani. I think those are just popularized because of Instagram and other kind of stuff. I've been there, and I've been with other people.
Okay. What I want to ask you next, in the last segment before we go, for anybody who comes to Bangalore for the first time and is trying to understand the history, the culture, and the background, they come with you on a virtual tour. But if you had to give us just a taste of what Bangalore can be for somebody who is absolutely new, different from the bars and the pub culture that we currently have, if you could just give us a quick 5-point guide as to what all they can do here that would be different from what their friends and peers and colleagues would show them.
If it's a visitor, it's important for them to know why they're coming to Bangalore, the problem. And if it's a global traveler or a person who's coming on because of many multinationals here, and I get a lot of them on my tours, they are perplexed why they have come to Bangalore. Many of them are first timers. The companies just send them across to some part of the world, and they're like figuring out what is this so special about this place now. And they're curious to know, and it's for many of them, when they think of India, it's not Bangalore, if not for the job that they have, because the company has an office there, so that's why they're traveling. But if you remove that, and they think of India, that's not the first recall. Bangalore is definitely not even there in your mind. You think of Delhi, Taj Mahal, Rajasthan, Golden Triangle, Varanasi, for some in the UK, maybe Goa, Mumbai, but definitely not Bangalore. Even if it has to be the south, it will be Kerala, it may be Tamil Nadu, maybe Hampi and Mysore, but definitely not Bangalore. Okay, so they need to know why they're coming. And it's a story of the city, I don't know if I can put it in 5 bullet points, but it's for them. I mean, they would be curious to know why are we here, what has made this stick. So I think they need to know why, the story of the city, and for that I think you need to go to. Even if you visit places, you may not know that. They need to read, they need to hear. You can walk into a historical garden like a Lal Bagh. You feel good about walking in nature, looking at all the children happy, but you may not know much. Unfortunately, we don't have too many plaques over there telling us stories about trees or the historical monuments that have it inside that. So it's just a nice jaywalk inside a park. So if you want to have just a relaxed walk, then it's fine. But if you want to know some more and why that is so integral for what Bangalore has become today, you need to know the stories.
I love it. I love it that, even though unlike a Delhi or a Mumbai or the Golden Triangle or, God's own country, we don't have that sort of a tourism Bangalore campaign. I still think the stories that you're saying are stunning, and people need to come in to experience this city in a whole new light. So to everybody watching this, what, according to you, is the story of Bangalore that you think is least talked about and should be more talked about to make this city one of the most beautiful spots to actually check out in India?
Take a few minutes and explain it. I can tell you right away. I told you about the humble beginnings. We know that we have evidence of habitation here that goes back to more than 3,000 years because there have been discoveries of dolmens and such. And then we know who were the early people who settled here, because those guys have left behind inscriptions in stones. So we know that from the 3rd century, mid-3rd century till about the 1000s, it was someone called the Western Gangas or Gangawadi Kingdom who were here. Then it changed hands to the Cholas for about 100 years. Then it was the Hoysalas who take over from then on till the Vijayanagara people take possession of this. And we have Kempegoda.
All right, we've come to the last segment of the podcast. And Praveen, what I want to ask you towards the end is for anybody who's coming in from anywhere in the world to explore Bangalore. Because it's not the usual spot to actually come and hang in. It's usually Delhi or, like you said, the Golden Triangle, maybe Jaipur. But what makes Bangalore tick? And what is the story of brand Bangalore that you think you are proud of, because there's so much of culture, history, archaeology that you yourself have discovered and talk about? What should this trip of theirs for 2 days, if they're 2 days in Bangalore, how would you wow them?
It's Bangalore is about stories. We have sites, but it's more stories, which can be brought alive in those sites. So it's many people are curious to know why they're here and what makes Bangalore tick. And especially for overseas visitors, many of them are bewildered that they're here at all, because many of them are visiting on work, and it's the companies which have sent them. And they are definitely picked to know that there's a place called Bangalore. And had they not been working in the corporate organization which has sent them, maybe they would have never heard of the city. So, and that's the reality of a typical overseas visitor in Bangalore. So it's good it's for them to. I like to highlight the story of the city in my tours, and we begin at the very beginning. So we tell them that, we start with the fact that there's evidence of habitation in this region that goes back to more than 3,000 years. There have been discoveries of dolmens, as I mentioned earlier, and then we know from the first millennia that who were the people who were here. So we know through inscriptions on stones that from about the mid 300s till about the 1000, it was the Western Gangas, or the Gangavadi kingdom as it was known as back then. And then following them were the Cholas, who were in Bangalore for about 100 years. And thereafter it becomes the possession of the Hoysalas, followed by the Vijayanagara Empire. And then in somewhere in the early 1500s, a feudal lord of the Vijayanagara Empire, that is Kempegoda, sets up a fortified city in 1537, and he and his family rule it for the next 100 years. And then it changes hands yet again, this time when the Bijapur Sultanate has occupied the city, and it's gifted to the father of Shivaji, Shaji Bhosle, and they hold it for the next 50 years. And then it's the Mughals who have it for about 3 years, from 1687 till 1690. The Mughals sell it to the kingdom of Mysore. The Maharaja of Mysore, called Chikkadeva Raja Vadiyar, acquires it for a princely sum of 300,000 rupees. And then within the kingdom of Mysore from 1760, it's a completely different personality who's in possession of Bangalore. It's Hyder Ali, and later on his son called Tipu. When Tipu was killed in battle in 1799 by the British, who were on a rampage in India by then, they handed over to the Vadiyars, who continued to rule till we become independent. In the meantime, as part of the plan between the British and the Maharaja of Mysore, a British cantonment is going to be set up in their territory, and they chose Bangalore as the destination. And that's what happens in 1807, 1809. What was then known as a civil and military station emerges. So it's basically two cities now which are there from about the early 1800s. It's a British city and a local city, divided by what is now a park. So that's how the story evolves of the city. And then this is the historical part now. Because of this unique way the city has evolved, we have Bangalore becoming what it is now. It's different from other large cities in India. As I mentioned, it's older than the earlier, the metros, whether it's Mumbai or Calcutta or Madras. It's different because of these events that have transpired before. Most people associate Bangalore with tech now. Okay, it's the Silicon Valley of the country, and people are wondering, how did it happen? Obviously, it didn't just happen by chance. There were people who took certain decisions, visionary rulers who have made it what it is today. And that happens. The genesis of this you can see from about the late 1800s. With the British already here, they have the cantonment by 1900 is larger than the actual city of Bangalore. So it's a large area. The Bangalore area, the fort area is only 2.5 square miles. The cantonment is almost 16 square miles, and there are good quality schools that have been established for the children of the administrators and the soldiers, whether it's Bishop Cotton's or St. Joseph's High School or Baldwin's High School or a Sacred Hearts Convent, or even a school for girls, the Bishop Cotton Girls High School. All of them were for the children of the empire. And later on, it's opened up to the Anglo-Indians, and then for people like you and I. So there was already a high quality education in Bangalore from that period. And then we have interesting events that shape the destiny of Bangalore. I would say one of the important turning point is when in 1897, when Maharani of Mysore, Vani Vilasa Sanidanaya, as she is more popularly known, gives a huge endowment of land, a huge land parcel and a large endowment to the founder of the Tata Empire, that is Jamshedji Tata, who was looking to set up the foremost science institute in all of India. And she swings the deal into Bangalore. And in 1909, we have what is known as the Indian Institute of Science emerging over here. The foremost science institute in all of India by the 1920s, 1930s. Bangalore is known as a science city, attracting the best science minds into this area, and this begets a culture of science in this area. We have polytechnics emerging. We have more of science being spoken about in this area. Then suddenly we become independent in 1947, and we have the new government, the independent India, deciding to set up what is known as the public sector undertakings, to generate employment and create products. And Bangalore becomes a chosen one for industries which require people who are either scientists or technicians or engineers. So right from the 1950s, 60s and 70s, 80s or mid-80s onwards, we have huge central government establishments such as, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited or BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, or Bharat Electronic Limited, what they're producing now, or Indian Institute of ITI or HMT. Then later on we had ISRO, all of them, setting up large operations. Either they have the headquarters here or they have large establishments, all of them employing people from a scientific temper. This is how Bangalore is evolving right up to you can say the mid-1980s. And then we have globalization, the winds of globalization blowing across the world, and many global companies look at India as a destination for outsourcing, and they come here and they gravitate to Bangalore because there's already a culture of science and there's a talent pool here. So that's how we have from the 1980s companies like Texas Instrument or a Motorola or a HP or a Nortel Network setting up small 20-member teams and testing the water, see if it works, and voila, it is great. It's working like magic. So 20 people become 200 people, 200 people have become 2,000 people, and then this word goes off to the rest of the world. Wow, this can be done over here. So now there's a deluge of companies from the 1990s, late 1900s. By 2000, it's a FOMO effect. If you don't have an operation in Bangalore, you're missing out, right? So this is how the city has evolved now, from being a major technology hub to now a startup capital. And we have the largest number of engineers in the whole world in one spot. Out of close to 1.25 million people out of 13 million people. So that's really how things have transpired, and it's still evolving. So this is a fascinating story that people should know. It just didn't happen. There were certain incidents and certain people who shaped the destiny of this, and there was a foundation which was already there. So yeah, I hope I've answered.
Lovely. I mean, brand Bangalore, I can actually put that into 3 parts and show how this city evolved from back in the day to now. Thank you so much for opening our eyes into understanding our city with an entirely new perspective and a set of eyes. I think I'm going to come with you on one of these tours or multiple of them to just enjoy this city so much more. The final shout out to everybody out there. You are a walking, talking encyclopedia of this city in terms of history, culture, architecture, and so many marvelous stories. On the Break Free podcast, we feature guests who are breaking free from the norm. How did you think you broke free from being a regular human into being, like I said, a walking, talking encyclopedia of the city, Bangalore?
Well, I'm one of those late bloomers, you can say. I've done many things in life before I realized that one should live the life doing things that they love. And I have been coasting along in life well into my 40s. And then I had this aha moment that enough of whatever I've done before. Let's not do things because you have to make a living, pay your checks and all that. Let's find a venture in which you have a deep passion. It took me a long time to come to that realization. There are lucky people, like India has just won the chess World Cup, right? They're all in the teens. There are such people who know what they are made for. And there are people like me who realize in their 40s what their destiny is. This is what is my passion. I love history. I like geography. I like meeting people. I like to walk. I like to run. So these are the things that, bring out the best in me and decide. And 8 years back when I began this activity, I decided I'm going to find something in this space that really gives me a joy. So yeah, this is what seemed like the best fit. And here I am.
As an ultra marathoner and as somebody who loves Bangalore so much, leave us with one historical fact of Bangalore that you think has always bowled you over. We will leave everybody with that tidbit to just ponder over on this podcast before we maybe bring you back for a second edition. Yeah.
So running has definitely helped me explore my city more. So, it's better than walking. It's faster. And if you're doing ultra marathons, you got to train a lot, hours, you're on the feet. So to keep me amused, I used to just take routes that are different for me. And then, even though I'm an old Bangalorean and I thought I knew a lot, but when you have to be on your feet for long hours, you try to amuse yourself by going to alleys that you've never been there before, and then you come chance upon discoveries of your own city. And honestly, I've really come across very fascinating things because I run, and I'm glad I've discovered those. I would not have probably discovered some of those things.
What have you discovered? One thing.
Let me give you an example. If you go to Basunagudi, there is a lovely urban dairy farm in a conservancy lane. All right, there is this dairy farmer. I think it's second or third generation, with the best kept and healthiest cows in the whole city. You got to see it to believe it. They're so well kept. And you come across these urban dairies and other places too, which are quite squalid, and the cows look, not in the best of shape, but these are very different. So, you get to speak to those people and ask them, why is it like this? And then it's fascinating. For me, I get a lot of joy just knowing the simple things. And then there is an urban dairy in the midst of Basunagudi, which is a beautiful, bustling area. And local neighbors tolerate the presence of 50 cows in their backyard. So these are things, I would never have known otherwise if I had not been running. I'm just giving you one example.
Middle of Basunagudi is exactly how we're going to end this podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, Praveen. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll, like I said, I think bring you back for a part 2 down the line, just to celebrate Bangalore a little bit more.
Having me over, Jane. It's been a delight to be here. And thanks again.
On the Break Free Podcast, a new guest every week, opening our eyes to new facets of life, of good living, and of stories like that of Praveen today. Thank you.